Man, this conversation just does not go away. We gotta get into some Vancouver Canucks and Detroit Red Wings trade talk because we have a number of guys whose names have all of a sudden been linked to Motown. Even though I would say maybe it's unlikely we see either of these guys actually waive and get moved in the first place. Now, first, we're going to dive into this article posted onto The Athletic by Max Bultman. Red Wings trade targets. 13 players who fit Detroit's needs this deadline. Now, of course, The Athletic is paid for material, so we're not going to go out there and screenshot this article itself. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to read it. That's all on you, especially if you have The Athletic. But we're heading over onto DetroitHockeyInsider.com because this piece by Julian Trecker dives into some of those names that Bultman writes about. Insider unveils that the Red Wings are linked to these three forwards. Let's scroll down and read. The Athletic's Max Bultman listed a few trade candidates that could be of interest for Yzerman ahead of the deadline. According to Bultman, Robert Thomas, Vinny Trocheck, and Elias Pettersson could be potential targets for Yzerman. Adding firepower to the top six could be what brings the Wings to the next level. Thomas, 26, won a Stanley Cup in his rookie year with the Blues, but now his team is last in the Central, tied with Winnipeg at 47 points. Vinny Trocheck, the Ranger center, is likely to get traded, as he could be one of the team's biggest assets in their retooling. He has high value considering his two-way game and cap-friendly $5.625 million AAV, with 3 more seasons after the current one on it. Finally, Elias Pettersson, another player that could bring the Wings to the next step. Considering his tough season in Vancouver and his $11.6 million AAV contract that expires in 2032, his market value isn't as high as it could be. However, a fresh start with a team like Detroit could help him get back to his former level. In the end, Yzerman's willingness to pay deadline prices will dictate what happens in the coming weeks. It'll be very interesting to see what kind of assets he's willing to part ways with. So there you go, one name down. Let's talk about EP40 and the Detroit Red Wings, whether or not there actually is a connection to be had here. Now, we've made a ton of videos dissecting what the trade price could be, the role Petey would have with Detroit. You're looking at essentially a second-line center to play behind Dylan Larkin, a guy who could slot in and essentially do what JT Compher, Andrew Kopp, some of these guys have been tasked to do over the course of the season. You would give him minutes with DeBrincat, you would give him minutes with Kane, you would see what EP40 is capable of doing in a sheltered second-line role rather than being a top-line dagger going up against all the difficult matchups. Petey this year has 31 points in 44 games, on pace for 52 points over 74. It is not at the same caliber of production as he had back in 22-23 when he was a 100-point guy. But you could honestly debate that the things that made Petey a 100-point scorer back then might actually come around once more if he were to find himself in a team like Detroit, for example. Not to say that he would get all the best minutes with the best guys, but I would probably wager and say that Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane are better than Linus Karlsson and Evander Kane. Like, just tossing that out there. Take whatever combination you want of Vancouver Canucks wingers, the Red Wings' offerings to Petey on the wings would be a lot better. Even if you think about the Brock Bessers and the DeBrusks and whatever, those guys have not been effective this season, so Elias Pettersson has all the more to gain if he were to head over to a brand new team like Detroit, for example. We know the Wings have history of defensively minded, solid two-way centers with strong game on the puck. Pettersson fits that mold. Datsuk, I'd say, was the biggest guy that I think a lot of Canucks fans saw similarities out of Pettersson from when he was younger. Maybe not so much nowadays, but EP40 definitely brings value. It's just whether or not he'd be interested in going over to Detroit, and if Yzerman would be interested in paying the price. The one thing that I could say Yzerman does probably like is the fact that PD is signed long-term. That's why he didn't go after Hughes. Quinn's contract was going to expire, and that was always going to be a red flag for Stevie Y. But you know whose contract is actually also expiring? Well, technically not Tyler Myers, but his contract is expiring in 2027, so the same timeline as to what was going on with Quinn. Take a look at this right here. It was a post made by Sakaris and Price on their Twitter account earlier last week, asking whether or not teams would be interested in Tyler Myers. It was Jeff Merrick on the program who answered this question, saying, "Will there be some teams interested?" Yeah, absolutely. A couple top of the mind that I would initially wonder about. Listen, they're one of the hottest teams in the NHL right now, and that's the Utah Mammoth. Not exactly a secret, they're probably looking for another defenseman. Tyler Myers could make some sense there in a second pairing role. And you could move John Marino down. Jeff Merrick also added the Detroit Red Wings, even though I think they're looking for more of a left shot D than a right shot D. I can see the Red Wings. A couple of other teams, Dallas has had interest before. I would imagine that may not have gone away. And so now we're talking about Tyler Myers, whether or not this guy would be a Red Wings target. And I'll just say this right off the bat. If it comes out that Steve Yzerman is looking at Tyler Myers as a trade acquisition, I would not be surprised. Think about the right side for a minute. Think about Jacob Bernard-Docker. Think about Travis Hamonic. Yeah, Hamonic, the fact that that guy is even an NHL defenseman at this stage of his career is ridiculous. The guy is not NHL caliber. He is not that good. Tyler Myers would be a tremendous upgrade over Travis Hamonic. Even though you can say the Wings and their biggest needs lie on the left side, the right side obviously can be improved as well. And Tyler Myers, for the most part, he hasn't had the greatest season. He's on pace for 13 points. It's a decline from all the other years he has had in Vancouver. But really, the team sucks. So I think you can't really go out there and blame Myers too bad. You could also say that the likelihood of Myers even getting moved in the first place is pretty low. Take a look at the contract that he is on, $3 million till the end of 2027. He does have a no-move clause this season on that deal. It's all going to be up to him whether or not he's interested in moving. But by all accounts, it seems like the guy does not want to leave. He spends his summers in Kelowna. He is a Vancouver guy. He wants to be here. And so what we're learning about Tyler Myers, as all these other reports are coming out, is that even if teams might be interested, there is no interest in the player from his perspective to move on from Vancouver, at least at this point. He wants to be a leader. He wants to be sticking it through with the rebuild. And he's 35 years old. The contract takes him until he will be 37, I think. Exactly, 37. So Myers, obviously, former Calder winner. There's a lot of value there because of his size and because of the physicality and because of the defensive tools, but would he be interested in going to Detroit? I'm not sure. Either way, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about either of these two guys being potential Red Wings trade targets? I hope you enjoyed this Finish 99, and bye.